G'day, it's Jason here from In Search of Australia. In this episode, I'm doing the Beginner's Guide to Fossicking in New South Wales. We'll look at the rules and regulations, just so you know where you can go and what you can use, as well as some techniques and tools that you can use to try and find some of that shiny or colourful stuff. Now, the very first thing you need to be aware of is where you can actually go fossicking. It's not like you can go down to your local river in the middle of a suburb or something like that and start fossicking. There are specific areas that you need to know about. Most will require you to have a fossicking license, so I'm going to put a link in the description of the video for you to go to, but it's one of those things that opens up fossicking areas to you. So the first place you should go is Resources New South Wales, so you can look at the Fossicking Guide to New South Wales. It's here where you'll find all the restrictions on fossicking, such as the equipment and surface disturbance restrictions, as well as the material that you can take, and I'll go through those. But it also goes through fossicking equipment that is permitted and not permitted. Now, the problem with this is it's a little vague, because when it says this is not an exhaustive list of permitted equipment and this is not an exhaustive list of prohibited equipment, it says go back to page 7 and the clarification is mechanical, electrical, excavation, processing by a special method, which is quite vague, so I actually had to investigate a bit there. The other thing you'll want to look at is getting your fossicking license, and that's here in the Forestry Corporation's license. So this is so you can go into state forests and fossick there. Then finally, you'll want to go to MinView, and this is where we can talk about where you can go and how to find these areas. So MinView gives you a whole lot of capabilities in checking what's around, and the first thing you'll probably want to look up is state forests. So when I click on that, I'm choosing this spot because my video is actually happening right here. So a lot of the information and footage you're seeing at the moment is done right there where I'm circling around it. So that's where I was, and that's Native Dog Creek. Now, a lot of people go, hey, wait a moment, Native Dog Creek, there's a problem with that. And I'll show you why. Because there are regions, even though you've got a state forest, where fossicking is not permitted. And Native Dog Creek is a well-known one for this, where it's got this pink area along here. Even though it's state forest, and even though I've got a license, I cannot fossick in this area. And the reason for that is to protect a frog, a species of frog. However, the council controls this land here and have left it open for fossicking. So it's one of those things where you find some more information out and make sure you're going into the right spots where you can avoid getting into trouble. Next thing I'll tick off is Crown Land. So if I tick the box Crown Land, we can see another area that's been highlighted. So I'll zoom out so you can just see the range of Crown Land being highlighted. So this is not private property, and in fact when you highlight this you can see the private property around here. So this would be someone's lot, and that there is likely to be to do with utilities or something like that. So obviously you can't go in there, and you'll notice that it's browned out a bit. But these green areas are Crown Land, which you should technically be able to do with permission. If you're seeking permission, you've got these numbers as a reference number. A lot of people will still just go to Crown Land because it's well known that permission is allowed to fossick in these areas. then you'll also get areas that are allocated to fossicking and they're still Crown land. However, there can be times when it's leased out, and usually you can tell that by signs or fences around the Crown land. The best advice is, if you see a fence, you just don't go past it. The Native Dog Creek area here did have council access, and it's got a fence that's sort of blocked by earth, but it's not actually completely blocked, and you can walk in through an opening in the fence, and it's still advertised on the council website as a place you can go fossicking. So you will find allocated areas as well. Areas you will find which are fossicking districts, and they get allocated for fossicking. Now, this is a little trickier than it seems. I'm here on the Campbell's River fossicking area. You'll notice it's Crown land, but it has actually been designated as a spot to go fossicking, and it's a Campbell's River fossicking area. So you're able to go there and fossick without any issue. However, when I go panning out, you'll sort of think, hey, wait a moment, out west I can go just about anywhere. You have to be mindful that when you look at something like this, you are covering up properties and so on. So if I pull off the fossicking districts, you can see now there's all these sort of lines that show property borders. Now we can actually put properties on this map as well, but it becomes very evident with fencing and things. Now, to show you that it's a little more confusing than it should be, here's the Vulcan State Forest. So you could fossick anywhere there if you have a fossicking license. But smack bang in the middle here is a public fossicking area. And that's the Sapphire Bend one, which is pretty much this area just in here. It doesn't show up when I put in fossicking districts. It's in the state forest, but it's an allocated area that's public, and you don't need a license to be there. So my best advice to find those spots that you don't need a fossicking license, you don't have to think too hard about it, is look up fossicking in local council districts, and you'll get some information on that. So I'll give you an example of the Gloucester tourism one. So in Gloucester, there's apparently fossicking that you can do, very hard to find spots, where they've even got what's called the Copeland Creek Reserve, and it's fossicking's allowed there. I only found that out from this brochure. It doesn't show up on MinView, and it just takes a little bit of research to find these free spots, without any controls on it as such in terms of licenses and permissions. So you do need to do a little research to go further afield. However, MinView will give you a majority of those things that you need to know where you can go. And when I zoom out across the state, the final thing you might want to add to this is tick that box, and now we're seeing where all the metallic minerals are found, and those yellow triangles are gold. So if I zoom in here, this is the Sunny Corner State Forest, just west of Lithgow, and you can actually click on these to find out some information on it. So there's the Junction Reef. I'll get the report, and it tells you it's a ceased operation, and there's several workings in the area, so maybe you want to go metal detecting there. I do need to add that you do need to be in incognito or private mode on browsers for this to work. I don't know why. It must be an old site and it's not meeting security requirements when you just go in normally. Whenever I click on these things, it says invalid or illegal text sort of thing. So make sure you're in incognito mode to be able to do this. Now, the equipment list does create some vague points. One of the things I tried was what was called a gravity dredge. I contacted mining to find out the legality of it. They said it's not allowed unless you got permission. This led to some confusion online as to whether you can use a yabby pump. Now, this is one that I made, but yabby pumps are available commercially for fishing, really. They're very useful otherwise for getting the bottom of your hole where you've dug for anything that you've left behind. Now, I got information back from mining about the yabby pump, which said that it's a handheld device, a handheld manual device that you can use. So this is perfectly legal to use for fossicking. What I can gather here is it's really down to the fact that you need to be manually using a tool to fossick. The moment it's automatic, you're doing something illegal in New South Wales. So it comes down to that idea of manually, slowly going through the process rather than a fast process that's automated. But to demonstrate, yabby pumps are very useful. The first bit of equipment you need is the gold pan. This is the bare essential for fossicking, other than one other thing, the shovel. You're going to have something to dig it up, obviously. So a shovel and a pan is probably the bare essentials to actually go and start finding gold. However, there's a few other things that I'd suggest you have. The sieve. The sieve makes it easier to pan because it categorizes large rocks, takes that out of the mix, and then you can move your concentrate a lot easier in the pan. A trowel. The trowel's good because sometimes you get crevices and sort of hard to reach areas that actually hold the gold. So I'd strongly suggest you have a trowel as well. You also want a bucket. Gold isn't always near where you're going to pan, unfortunately. So sometimes you've got to transport your concentrate to an area that's easier to pan. Gloves. The reason I've got gloves, you are moving lots of sharp rocks and things like that, so it does get wearing on your hands. So I strongly suggest to have gloves. You can also get sealed gloves that keep you warm in winter too, so it is another item that I'd suggest you have. Gumboots. You're going to be walking through water and sitting in water, and sometimes you don't want to get your feet wet. The other option is waders. Or in my case, I've been using a wetsuit because I do go sniping, which means I'm immersed in water entirely. However, gumboots would be your basics. The other good reason for gumboots is snakes. The gem sieve, this comes in two parts. You've got your 1/4 inch and your 1/8 inch sieves. You need this to categorize your gemstones. To collect your gold, a snuffer bottle. And to collect your gems, some sort of container, and tweezers. These are really important because when you push with your fingers into the concentrate of gravel, you can push the gems down, whereas with the tweezers, you can manipulate all the stones a lot better without pushing them back into the pile. So the big question is, where do you go? So in a river, you're going to look for two things. It's what we call a low pressure zone or a friction point. So a good idea is when you look at rivers, you might see things like erosion. That means that there's a friction point. The water's come up against it and it's actually pulling away the rocks. It often reveals old riverbeds. So you can see along here, there's an old riverbed, which means we can test underneath that old riverbed for any gold. The other place is crevices. So you'll see that along here, there's all these little riffles of rock. What happens is, especially when they're jagged and rough, you can actually see it collect rocks, and these large boulders that have been washed down river are caught in crevices. So if we move them, we'd find a crevice underneath, and you'll probably find gold in there. So another thing you can look for is a low pressure zone. So as I come down this river here, you'll see that the water gets deeper and it gets wider. It also stops flowing as strongly. Quite often heavies will drop in this instance because there's not as much pressure like you'd get in rapids. Another thing you can look for are large obstacles, like really large rocks. What happens is behind that rock here, the pressure drops, and so a lot of things will drop and stay there while the rapids go around the rock. You can see that this one's been dug a bit. So a good example of seeing how gold gets caught is I just cleared this area on the crevice. You'll see here that there's a bit of buckshot just to the left of the screen, and to the right, it's a little bit blurry, there's a speck of gold. So if I put my finger there, you can sort of see the gold a bit blurry, shining, and a bit of buckshot. Both heavy items have been caught on the crevice because of the friction caused by its texture. Now, talking about moving rocks, there are a number of rules that you've got to be aware of. In terms of moving rocks, you can't move a rock that's larger than 50 centimetres. So the way I determine whether I'm allowed to move a rock is if I have to spread my arms out wide, it's too big. But if I keep my arms parallel to my body, that's about 50 centimetres for me. So it's not like we can go out and have a tape measure to check. So that's the first thing. Another thing you've got to be aware of is that behind me you might notice this branch coming down along here. You're not supposed to move those either. It comes under fisheries there, where if there's a snag, a large branch, a large tree that's fallen in the river, you're not allowed to move that because that tends to be a place that fish will spawn and things like that. So you're not allowed to move those on the banks, so right off the river, or within the river itself. The length is 3 meters or more. So you can move some, but just be wary of the size. One of the other things you need to consider is the fact that you cannot move more than 1 cubic meter of material within 48 hours. Now, when I look here, this has obviously been dredged, which is illegal in itself, but they've moved way more than 1 cubic meter in 48 hours. The other thing is you are supposed to, when digging, if you've removed rocks, you should replace them as well. So this should have been all pushed back into here as well. Now with hand tools, it's really difficult to move 1 cubic meter of material. I think the most I've moved would be 5 buckets, so 50 litres. I'd be getting close in that time, but yeah, that's a lot of work to do something like that. It is good to note though, and you're not allowed to remove more than 10 kilograms of what would say ore-bearing material. So if you've got material that has gold in it, you can't move more than 10 kilograms of that out of the area in 48 hours. Got a sample of how you'd go about this. You'll notice that I've got the gem sieves above here, above the pan, and I've put my material in the top so that I can categorize through the gem sieves. So you have your larger one on top and then the smaller one underneath and the pan underneath that. The only reason I've got the pan here is there's gold here. Otherwise you'd not bother with the pan. So just need to agitate it, push the clay through. All these large rocks aren't any use to us, so you can throw them out, unless of course you find a 30 carat sapphire or something, but that would be very apparent. We just need to clean that up. Gloves are good here. Some places can be quite rough, the types of stones, but because these have been in the river, they're rounded, so it's not so bad. So I'm going to remove my pan for later. And shake this one into this sieve. Probably need to put the pan back under, I just noticed, because there's still some silt there. So I'm going to put it back under there. Give this a shake. Really, I'm just trying to catch any gold. Okay. Now, just in case there's some small ones still stuck in the top sieve, we put them back together. And you do a rocking motion like this. And what I'm trying to do is create a line straight down the sieve. And you can straight down to pat it out. If you do spot a gemstone at this point, take it out now. Don't risk it. Just going to get rid of some of these bigger rocks because I think they can impede the movement. I'm going to put that in the pan. That was just a bit of clay. Put the big one aside. Now we've got the small sieve. And you can see now how it's categorized. There's smaller gravel in here. Same deal. We want to center it. Side to side motion. Create a line. And what should be happening is all the heavies are moving into the center. This is a bit harder because it's so full. Okay, let's flip it. Stop there. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to do a pancake motion so that none of this shifts. And it's a quick flip and down. And then what we should have is the heavies in there. And I can already see a zircon straight there. So what you'll find is if you've sieved correctly, the gemstone will sit right on top, and there's a zircon. If I track back out, you can see that it's sitting smack bang in the middle. So when you do dig down, what you want to get to is the layer that has gravel, usually just above the bedrock. So bedrock is the deepest you can go. It's large rock formations that the creeks run over. In this case, you can see that there's sort of gravel and silt all mixed together. This is a good sign that you'll find gold or gemstones. So once you've got your concentrates in your pan, what you want to do is what we call stratify. So stratifying is pushing all the heavier material to the bottom of the pan. And we do that by moving it around really vigorously. Now, anything that flies out is not what you want anyway. It's too light. Then I'm going to just angle it a little bit so I can start shifting all the material down into the corner here. Again, you can be quite vigorous here. And then let it wash out. All that top layer that just washed off, very light. And what we're now doing is categorizing with the pan. So we're getting rid of all of our light material by stratifying it and then washing it off. And so essentially we're getting to the point of only having heavy material, or concentrates as we call it. But one of the key things to do is keep agitating, keep stratifying. I tend to stop once I see this lip, because I have seen gold get stuck up in that upper riffle. And when you've got gemstones in the area, the gemstones actually move quicker than the gold. So it's good to keep checking. And what I'm starting to see now is a whole lot of black rocks, so it's probably spinel. That's an indicator that I'm getting close to the heavy materials. If it's only gold in the area, you might just start seeing black sand. And when you see that, you don't really want to wash too much out at that point. And you can see that the material's not running off as quick now. Now, because I've got gems, I'm going to stay on the larger riffles. They'll get caught in that. If I move to these ones, I'm likely to lose gems. And now I can see a zircon sitting there. So I'm obviously reaching that point where the heavies are about to go off the pan. There's a couple of ways people move the material at the end. One of the techniques is to bring the water up, bump it down, and it leaves the heavies up here. And you can probably see a little bit of gold there that got left behind. The way I like doing it though is agitate, bring the water down to just enough for it to move material like that, and then do a quick bump. And what that does is it pushes all the light material off here and leaves all the heavier stuff up there, in which then I can start doing that bump. And you'll see that the gold is now on the tail end. You'll also note that there's some black sand and heavier ironstone and the odd crystal. In the centre of the screen there is a zircon. Always a good sign when you get a zircon sitting right on top of your shovel load. Not quite what you'd call a top sieve, but this zircon's quite a nice size. Great colour. These big ones just show up like a sore thumb. So when you've categorised your gold, you're ready to snuffle it up. I'm just going to warn you that if you let gold dry a little bit too much, when you come back, you might find it actually floats on the water. So just be careful when you're doing that. Like if you sort of tip it back to have a look, what you'll find is gold is hydrophobic. So what that means is it tries to resist water, and I've actually got a few pieces now floating. I'm just going to knock them back in. So with our snuffer bottle, we squeeze and like a little vacuum, suck up our gold. Now when I squeeze that back out, the gold's not going to come back out because the straw only goes to about here, and that means it all drops in but can't get back in the hole again. So just categorise again and squeeze the bottle, vacuum it up until you can't see any gold at all. So just to show during the demonstration that I did here, this is the gold that was collected. So here's the gem taking. Two sapphire, a devil's dice, and lots of zircon, with quite a nice sized one next to a devil's dice there. So I hope this helps you go on your first journey out to Fossick, and good luck with it. See you in the next episode.